Welcome to the Deep Dive. We pull together sources, research, and our own notes to extract the most important insights, all tailored for you. What if the history you think you know has a secret chapter, hiding in plain sight? One that challenges accepted truths about powerful institutions and pivotal moments.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. And today, we're diving deep into an audio source that, well, it presents some truly extraordinary claims. Our mission here is really to endorse these claims, not at all. It's to unpack them for you.
Right.
We want to help you understand the specific arguments, the evidence as it's presented in this material, and crucially, how a very particular, sometimes controversial perspective on well-known events can be constructed from various bits of information. It's really about giving you a shortcut to understanding this specific viewpoint, warts and all.
Exactly. That's the goal, to navigate this complex material together. So let's unpack this fascinating narrative. We're starting with something that might seem a bit technical at first, but, well, according to our source, it has deep implications for control and communication. We're talking about JFK's vision for satellites. The source jumps right into the Communications Satellite Act of 1962, initiated by President Kennedy.
And what's immediately highlighted in this material is this skepticism around the bill. Right from the very start, Senator Russell Long, for instance, he initially called it as crooked as a dog's hind leg.
Wow, okay.
And then apparently after being convinced of his purpose, the source notes he actually escalated his condemnation, said it was as crooked as a barrel of snakes.
So the source is framing this with immediate suspicion.
Definitely. This perspective, as it's presented, suggests there's some kind of underlying, maybe hidden agenda right from the foundation of modern satellite communication.
And it's interesting how AT&T comes in. Their argument that space communication was basically just fancy submarine cables. It sounds practical, but the source seems to imply, well, maybe that wasn't the real story.
Exactly. Then they bring up Intelsat-1, launched April 6, 1965, one of the first geostationary communication satellites.
Okay.
But what the source really focuses on next is its unusual pattern of activation. It was only supposed to last 18 months, but it stayed in use for 4 years. Then deactivated early 69, reactivated for Apollo 11 in June 69.
Just for Apollo 11.
Apparently. Then deactivated again in August 69. And the source even notes it was reactivated for its 25th anniversary in 1990 and claims it's still in orbit.
That is odd.
Yeah, and this point about its, unexpected longevity and this weird on-again, off-again usage. It's presented by the source to suggest something unusual is going on, maybe a hidden purpose beyond just, telephone calls and TV signals.
Okay.
And this leads directly into ComSat, the Communications Satellite Corporation.
Right, formed in 62.
Yep. A joint venture, government and private sector. Publicly traded in 63, based in D.C., and crucially, the material notes its founding board, 6 people, all named by Kennedy himself.
So Kennedy sets up this new, potentially powerful entity, ComSat. And according to our source, the person put in charge.
Yep.
Well, he casts a very long shadow, Philip Graham.
Indeed, Philip Graham. He wasn't just the chairman of ComSat, though he held that post until resigning in January 63. He was also the publisher and co-owner of the Washington Post through his marriage to Katharine Graham.
Right, K. Graham.
The source really portrays him as this incredibly influential figure. Credits them with transforming the Post into one of the most, significant papers in the country.
And the source makes a point of his background. Harvard Law, trusted friend of LBJ and JFK, who, as you just said, named him to head ComSat. The material stresses his deep, deep connections all over Washington. Names like Harriman, Richard Bissell, Joe Alsop, even Allen Dulles.
Yeah, the whole network.
In fact, there's even a claim that Graham and Joseph Alsop were the ones who convinced Kennedy to pick Johnson as his running mate.
And this network, we're told, goes even deeper. The source alleges very close ties between Graham and the CIA, specifically mentioning relationships with Tracy Barnes and Frank Wisner.
Okay, so now we're getting into the intelligence connections.
Exactly. And this is where the narrative shifts into really controversial territory, especially with the claims about Operation Mockingbird.
Oh, yes, Mockingbird.
Which is described by the source, as a CIA program specifically designed to infiltrate American media, right here at home.
And to back this up, the source points to Carl Bernstein's 1977 Rolling Stone piece.
Right.
Which, as cited here, stated over 400 American journalists secretly did work for the CIA. Everything from gathering intel to acting as go-betweens.
With management's okay. That's the key part the source highlights.
And they connect this directly to Graham, alleging that under him, the Post just blossomed, expanded, acquired Newsweek, other properties.
All happening right after the CIA was established in 1947. The timing is presented as significant.
Mm-hmm.
The material even quotes an author, Deborah Davis, who apparently described Graham as an architect of this widespread CIA manipulation of journalists.
An architect. Wow.
So the conclusion the source draws is pretty stark. Graham, they contend, turned the Post into an effective and influential propaganda conduit for the CIA.
So you have this picture of immense power influence, alleged deep state connections, but then the story takes a very dark turn.
It really does, leading to Philip Graham's downfall and what the source calls his mysterious death.
The source mentions that Graham's father-in-law, Eugene Meyer, by the time he died in '59, was maybe having second thoughts about handing the empire over to Graham.
Yeah, and the source digs into Graham's personal life, his affair with Robin Webb, whom he apparently preferred publicly to his wife, Catherine, and his reportedly abusive behavior towards her. But then, citing Deborah Davis again, the source claims Graham started rattling the CIA after having some kind of breakdown, talking openly about their manipulation of journalists, turning on his old friends in politics and media.
So the implication is he became a liability.
That's exactly how the source frames it, that he can no longer be trusted by, the powers that be.
And the source speculates maybe he was under surveillance, that his legendary mental breakdown might have been linked to psychiatric treatments, maybe even CIA experiments with mind-altering drugs.
That's the speculation presented, yes. And this whole Graham split, this family drama, it apparently caused huge waves in Washington because of the paper's power and its alleged ties to the CIA and the elite.
Things really escalated, didn't they? The source claims Graham tried to rewrite his will 3 times in spring '63.
Right. Each time cutting Catherine down, boosting Robin Webb, until the last one cut Catherine out completely. And his lawyer through this was Edward Bennett Williams.
Okay. And Catherine's reaction?
Well, the source, citing Davis, says she was immediate. Told her lawyer, Clark Clifford, that control of the Post had to be hers, period, in any divorce. Non-negotiable.
And then came this convention speech.
Yeah, the source describes this blistering speech at a newspaper publishers convention in Arizona. Graham supposedly just let loose. Attacked the CIA, spilled insider secrets about D.C., even revealed JFK's alleged affair with Mary Meyer.
Who was married to a top CIA official, Cord Meyer.
Exactly. That would have caused a firestorm.
So according to the source, what happened next was dramatic.
Very. They claim Catherine flew straight to Phoenix, snatched up her husband, their words, who was apparently captured after a struggle, put in a straitjacket, sedated, and flown to a private mental clinic in Rockville, Maryland.
Wow, just grabbed him.
That's the story told in the source. Then comes August 3rd, 1963, the day he died. Catherine reportedly picked him up from the clinic, drove him to their country place in Virginia. Later that day, she was supposedly napping. Philip died from a shotgun blast in the bathtub downstairs, ruled a suicide.
But the source immediately says, wait a minute.
Right. They challenged the suicide ruling, flat out ask, was he shot to keep him quiet, and laying the Post in Kay's hands.
And then the probate, the handling of the will?
Yeah, that gets complicated too. Catherine's lawyer challenged the legality of that final will cutting her out. Edward Bennett Williams, who, remember, drafted the will for Philip, testified Graham wasn't of sound mind.
Huh. Interesting testimony from the guy who wrote it.
So the judge ruled Graham died intestate, meaning legally without a valid will, which, according to the source, cleared the way for Catherine to inherit differently. And Williams then helped her get control of the Post and ensured that final will, the one leaving everything to Robin Webb, never became public record.
So the source leaves you with heavy implications, citing Deborah Davis again, mentioning speculation that maybe Catherine arranged for him to be killed, or somebody said to her, don't worry, we'll take care of it.
It's a stark insinuation presented right there in the source material.
And they wrap up this section with that Art Buchwald quote from Catherine Graham's 70th birthday party.
Yeah. There's one word that brings us all together here tonight, and that word is fear. It's used by the source to kind of encapsulate the power and maybe the ruthlessness they're attributing to that whole circle.
Okay, so we've traced this intricate web around Philip Graham, the Washington Post, the alleged CIA connections, painting this picture of deep media control ending in his controversial death.
Right. But then the source pivots dramatically. It connects these narratives to the JFK assassination and starts making some really extraordinary claims about George H.W. Bush.
This is where it gets particularly wild, based on the source material.
Yeah.
They introduced the central mystery, George H.W. Bush apparently being unable to recall where he was on November 20th, 1963.
Yeah. The day JFK was killed. The source points out, most people over 5 remember exactly where they were.
Right.
They even highlight an audio clip the source includes of Bush at Gerald Ford's funeral, kind of smiling while mentioning a deluded gunman killing Kennedy. The source presents this as odd.
And they lean heavily on Russ Baker's book, Family of Secrets, which looked into Bush's activities around that time.
Correct. The implication, as the source frames it, is that this memory lapse isn't just forgetfulness, it's suspicious. Suggests maybe deliberate obfuscation.
And to support this, they bring forward 2 specific FBI memos as their alleged evidence.
Okay, memo number 1. It's a declassified FBI memo from J. Edgar Hoover himself, dated November 23, 1963, so the day after. It references the assassination, Cuban exiles, and according to the source, this memo names George Bush as the CIA representative liaising with the FBI and DIA about the assassination.
George Bush, CIA liaison in assassination the day after it happened.
That's the claim based on the memo. Now, Bush, when this memo came out years later, denied it was him. The CIA backed him up, explained it was another George Bush.
The other George Bush explanation.
Right. Described by the source as this low-level file clerk just recruited in '63, let go soon after the assassination. Apparently, when journalists found that George Bush, he also denied it was him in the memo. So the source basically says this whole CIA explanation was a fabrication, a cover story to protect the real George Bush involved George H.W. Bush.
Okay, so that's memo 1. What about the second one?
Memo 2 is dated November 22nd, 1963, the actual day of the assassination at 1:45 p.m. It supposedly recorded a phone call to the Houston FBI office from a man identifying himself as George H.W. Bush using the initials from Zapata Offshore.
His company.
His company, offering possible information on the shooter and claiming he was calling from Tyler, Texas.
Okay, wait. So one memo allegedly puts him as a CIA liaison discussing the assassination, and another from the same day has him calling the FBI as a private citizen with a tip from Tyler, Texas, while he later can't remember where he was.
That's the contradiction the source hammers home. They use these inconsistencies to suggest a pattern, not just errors, but deliberate obfuscation, maybe even a cover-up.
So what about that Tyler, Texas alibi? The source tries to pick that apart too, right?
Oh yeah. They bring up Barbara Bush's memoirs from '93 or '94, where she apparently suddenly remembers where they were on November 22nd, including this purported letter she wrote from Tyler, Texas, talking about hearing the news.
A letter surfaces decades later.
Right. And the source expresses, let's say, extreme skepticism about this letter. Points out it's addressed vaguely to Dear Family, has misspelled names. Basically implies it was cooked up later.
Okay. Any other details from that letter?
Well, this purported letter mentions a Doris Elmer, whose husband was so kind to George when he was in Greece. The source jumps on this, claiming this Almar, possibly a misspelling, was actually a known CIA station chief involved in removing foreign leaders.
Oh, come on!
Who the source claims just happened to be in the Dallas area that week. It's presented as another suspicious coincidence.
So the source basically throws out the Tyler alibi.
Completely. Calls it a phony alibi. They assert Bush was actually staying at the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Dallas, just blocks from Dealey Plaza.
In Dallas, not Tyler.
Right. They claimed his CIA assignment, whatever it was in Dallas, and he was physically present there on November 22nd.
And they question the timing, too. Calling the FBI at 1:45 p.m. from Tyler.
Yeah, they argue JFK was shot at 12:30 p.m. So Bush supposedly making a speech in Tyler around 1:45 p.m. to a group of Republican JFK haters, as the source puts it.
Yeah.
They find that implausible.
And then they make an even more direct, shocking allegation.
They do. The source alleges Bush was actually in Dallas supervising the second-floor DOE hit team. Department of Energy. It's unclear, but that's the claim. Supervising a hit team.
That's a massive claim. Do they offer anything else?
Well, they claim there are photos, allegedly, showing George H.W. Bush outside the Texas School Book Depository right after the shooting.
Photos. Are they clear? Definitive?
The source presents them as such, though identification from old, grainy photos is often debated, as you know. They also remind the listener of Bush's context then. 39 years old, Harris County GOP chair, outspoken JFK critic, and they add another claim that on November 21st, the day before, Bush was at the Sheraton Dallas, talked to oil drilling contractors, and was later supposedly seen at Clint Murchison Sr.'s home.
The oil tycoon.
Right, receiving last-minute instructions and toasting JFK's murder the night before it happened. Again, an explosive claim from the source.
This just keeps escalating. They connect his Yale background, too. Skull and bones.
Yeah, the source claims Bush was likely recruited into the CIA while at Yale through Skull and Bones, and that his company, Zapata Offshore,
His oil company.
was basically a CIA front. Global rigs, perfect cover for him to, quote, vanish for weeks on CIA business. They even mentioned the Bay of Pigs invasion was codenamed Operation Zapata, and claimed 2 Navy ships used were renamed Houston and Barbara. That claim comes via Colonel Fletcher Prouty, apparently.
So Zapata Offshore, ECI front, according to this source.
That's the assertion. And they loop back to that first FBI memo, the one from Hoover's office 7 days after the assassination, supposedly verifying George H.W. Bush as a CIA officer in '63, getting updates on anti-Castro Cubans. The source insists this refers to him, George Herbert Walker Bush, not the file clerk.
Right.
And they add that Bush later falsely testified before Congress in 1976, denying he'd ever worked for the CIA, right before President Ford appointed him CIA director.
The irony there is thick, if the source's claims are accurate.
Indeed. And then there's another connection they make, George de Mohrenschildt.
Okay, who was he in this narrative?
The source claims Bush was a close friend of de Mohrenschildt, both members of the Dallas Petroleum Club. Now, de Mohrenschildt is infamous because he was found shot to death the day before he was scheduled to testify before the House Select Committee on Assassinations about the JFK and MLK deaths.
Highly suspicious timing.
Extremely. And the source states Bush's name and address were found in de Mohrenschildt's address book. They also cite alleged CIA documents showing de Mohrenschildt made frequent trips to Mexico and Panama during the Bay of Pigs operations Zapata planning, filing reports back to the CIA. His own son-in-law supposedly told the Warren Commission he thought de Mohrenschildt was spying for the invasion.
Okay, so de Mohrenschildt potentially linked to CIA, Bush, and the Bay of Pigs. But what's the Oswald connection?
Here's the direct claim from the source. De Mohrenschildt was Lee Harvey Oswald's best friend and handler after Oswald arrived in Dallas in the fall of '63 and got that job at the Texas School Book Depository.
Wow. So Bush, de Mohrenschildt, Oswald's handler, that's the chain the source presents.
That's the chain they lay out, yes.
Yeah.
Connecting all these figures together around the assassination.
So after weaving all these threads, the memos, the alibi issues, Zapata, de Mohrenschildt, what is the source's final word, their bottom line on the JFK assassination itself?
Their conclusion is absolutely firm. No ambiguity. They state John F. Kennedy died that day. It was a CIA hit.
A CIA hit.
With many of the Secret Service and other prominent businessmen, and richly in the know. Full stop.
And they bring LBJ into it directly.
Explicitly. They state Lyndon B. Johnson knew he was going to become president that day.
Okay.
They describe the assassination itself as a planned attack by several shooting squads. They name locations like the Dex building, probably meaning the Daltex building and the curbside gutter. Not a lone gunman.
Multiple shooters, coordinated.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
And they allege a massive cleanup to alter the autopsy afterwards, all to prop up the single shooter theory and paint Lee Harvey Oswald as just a patsy.
So a complete rejection of the official narrative.
Total rejection. The source concludes it was definitely a planned attack and somebody was there to oversee it all. And the implication throughout this section is that the somebody overseeing it might have been George H.W. Bush.
Okay. So after laying out this incredibly complex and controversial narrative about George H.W. Bush and JFK, the source then tries to tie it all together. They bring us back around.
They do. They bring us full circle, connecting these two, seemingly separate stories, Philip Graham's death and the JFK assassination allegations against Bush, in a really surprising way. According to the source, it comes down to a single piece of visual evidence found at a rather somber event.
Don't tell me. Philip Graham's funeral.
Exactly. Philip Graham's funeral back in August 1963. That's where the source claims a critical piece of their puzzle falls into place.
So what exactly do they claim they found?
Well, the source describes finding photos from the funeral. And their central visual evidence, as they call it, is the claim that George H.W. Bush is clearly identifiable in one of those photos from Graham's 1963 funeral.
Bush at Philip Graham's funeral in August '63, before the assassination.
That's the claim. The source meticulously points to features in the image, the man's height, his face, the way he's dressed, and argues it's undeniably George H.W. Bush. They acknowledge other people might identify him differently, but they are firm. It's Bush.
And why is this photo supposedly so important to their narrative? What's the smoking gun aspect here?
Well, the source contends this visual is the key. It's presented as crucial evidence, Again, they're framing of Bush's alleged secret CIA involvement way back in mid-1963, even before the memos they discussed.
Ah, so it potentially places him inside this powerful, maybe covert circle before JFK's death.
Precisely. They argue it links him directly to these claims of, well, treason and murder. They interpret this photo as showing Bush was part of that inner circle of powerful figures, people like Graham, maybe connected to the intelligence community who, in their narrative, were involved in these alleged deep state operations and ultimately the JFK hit.
So this single photo from a funeral becomes the linchpin for their entire case against Bush.
That's how they present it, yeah. This image, they conclude, provides the final damning piece of alleged proof. It ties together the Graham story, the CIA allegations, and the JFK assassination claims, all focused on George H.W. Bush.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. To summarize this deep dive, we've explored this audio source, and it weaves together a really intricate narrative.
Very intricate.
Starting with alleged media influence and intelligence operations around figures like Philip Graham at the Washington Post.
Who, according to the source, essentially became a propaganda conduit for the CIA before his own controversial death.
Right, and then that narrative extends, makes these alleged direct connections between George H.W. Bush and the JFK assassination.
Yeah, covering alleged CIA ties, conflicting alibis, secret operations, culminating in the source presenting that funeral photo as their supposed damning evidence of his hidden involvement.
And as we said right at the start, our goal here wasn't to validate any of this, but to give you a clear understanding of the specific arguments and the evidence as presented by this particular source.
Exactly. It's about unpacking the narrative they constructed, letting you see how these different perspectives, even the really controversial ones, can be built using selected material, presented as a coherent, if alternative, story.
It really has been a deep dive into a world where, historical events are seen through a very different lens, one that challenges official narratives, suggests hidden operations.
Definitely. And as you, the listener, consider this intricate web of claims we've just walked through, all drawn from this one source material, maybe the question to ponder is, what does it mean to critically evaluate sources like this? Sources that stand in such stark contrast to, conventional history.
Yeah, how do we discern what to believe, or even just what weight to give different claims when information gets this layered, this complex, and frankly, this accusatory?
That's the challenge, isn't it? Something to think about.